Hey BR fans, today we are going to be reviewing a bike that, to be honest, I'm kind of surprised we haven't covered yet, just because it's one of the most top-selling, best-selling bikes in the United States. That is the Lectric XP 3.0. We get a lot of activity, people, owners asking questions in the forum. So we wanted to bring the bike in, do a full review, and let you know if, kind of what we think about it. So hang tight with me. We're gonna go through all the specs, all the components, and then go for a ride and see what the XP 3.0 can do. All right, so the Lectric XP 3.0. Now I've got two different versions here, right? We're gonna kind of cover both bikes in the same review. So I hope this is a good way to set it up. If you want me to do it otherwise, let me know. It's just tough when you have two bikes. But it does come in two different frames. So this is their regular. I'm not gonna call it a high step. I'm gonna call it more of like a mid step. And it comes in black. The one behind is their step through or low step. And this one comes in both black and white. Now, they also have a regular and a long range version. We'll get more into that on the batteries. So you do have a couple different options in terms of color, in terms of style. They're both aluminum frames. They're both folding, fat tire e-bikes. And weight-wise, you're right just below 65 pounds with the battery and just over 58 pounds without the battery. One of the nice things about the Lectric XP is it does actually fit a pretty wide range of riders. On the step through, they claim to fit riders between 4'10" and 6'3", and then on the mid step here, that increases by 2 inches, 4'10" to 6'5", and really that's mostly because of the step over height, the seat height. So there's a 2-inch difference between the regular and the low step there, where the minimum seat height on the regular goes down to 32 inches. So that's if you slam that saddle all the way down, it goes up to 42. And then on the step through, it's just 30 inches to 40 inches. So basically, if you're closer to the 4'10", you'll probably want the step through height. If you're closer to the 6'3", 6'5", definitely if you're over 6'2", I would say go with the mid step. But also if you have any kind of mobility issues, like this low step is going to be a better option because you can just it's really easy to just step right over here and get on that bike. It's very approachable, very easy to get on and off, right? Now they both fold down to about 37 inches by 18 by 28. So it makes it very, very, transport friendly. So Lectric really took off with the RV crowd, and you can see why, right? You've got the fat tires, you got suspension, you got all these things that you want, and kind of that bike you want to throw on an RV and take camping, but you can fold it up and go. So that's really kind of where they kind of built their brand, and just did a fantastic job with it. Now, diving into some of the other specs, we'll kind of walk you through the bike. On the front and the rear, you have the fenders. You notice they are metal fenders here. So you can hear that. So it makes them very sturdy. You'll hear a little bit of noise if you're kind of going over rocks or things of that nature. If they get bent, it'll be a little bit harder to bend it back in place, but these have held up fantastically. Really good quality there. As you go to the rear, you'll notice there is this integrated, so this is welded to the frame, rear rack. And it has a really high weight capacity at 150 pounds, so you can put someone back on. You'll notice the mounting points. You've got those 4 mounting points here for seats, for other kind of accessories that they have. There's not any mounting points for a water bottle on that top tube. There are some mounting points on the front. Just notice if you do weigh these up a little bit, that it is going to kind of slightly compress that fork. And so the ride is just going to be a little bit squishier, not as firm. Not a huge deal, but that is something to think about. Now, the other thing that makes this kind of a good kind of go anywhere, do anything bike, the front The wheels, 20-inch wheels by 3-inch. On those tires, you can see nice knobby tread there. So if you're kind of going off-road like we are, you know, kind of right here, it has good grip, good stability. The 3-inch wheels, again, front and back. Right here. Just makes the bike a little bit more maneuverable and a little bit speedier off the line, I guess, if you want to get like super technical versus like a 4-inch fat tire. So I really do like those tires. I like the size, makes it approachable again, and does a really good job. The other things that I do want to point out here, they do have, in terms of lights, you do have a rear headlight here. And you also do have a front headlight. Let's show this guy a little bit because I'm not giving this one any love. So you do have a front headlight. Now the lights are definitely more to be seen by someone else, so they'll be able to see your light, especially with that reflector as well. They're not going to give you a ton of brightness as you are riding down the road for you to see. So if you're traveling 20 miles an hour on these things down the road and it's dark, I would suggest getting an additional light for that. You know, and kind of overall, you know, this bike at just under $1,000, like it was one of the first bikes under $1,000 that I remember going, this actually makes sense. There's a lot of value, good, very passionate founders, and they've just put a lot of really good things into this bike for that price range. And I think that's really why it's become such a popular and best-selling bike in the United States. All right, let's jump into the heart of the bike, which is the motor and the battery. So this motor, it's Lectric branded on the outside. It's a 500 watt rear hub motor with 55 Newton meters of torque. The battery is housed right here in this top tube. You can fold it, you can unfold it, pull the battery out, and they do have two different battery options. So at the $999 price level, you get their, you know, we'll call it their average battery, which is, both of them are 48 volt. This one has, the average one is 500 watt hours, then the long range one is 672 watt hours. So from a range perspective, they claim to get between 17 and 45 miles on the 500 watt battery, and then you bump that up a little bit going from 25 to 65 miles on the long range. So if you feel like you need that long range battery, pay an extra $100. It's not a bad deal right up front. And I will say, from a range test, you know, what I've tested, it actually matches that pretty well. So I think it's a very good expectation of what you'll get depending on the weight, depending on where you're riding, etc. Now, what do I think about the motor? The motor is, so this, again, it's a 500 watt rear hub motor, 55 Newton meters of torque. When I've hill tested the bike, it actually, I would say, does better than what I would expect out of a 500 watt rear hub motor. Lectric has made a point to have this motor peak at 1,000 watts, and you definitely feel that power both when you start up and when you start to climb a hill. It's very peppy. To be honest, I'm kind of surprised they didn't just put a 750 watt motor in it. My guess is the 500 watts saved a little bit of money. So I'll give them a thumbs up for that, because it feels like a 750 watt motor and performs like a 750 watt motor, but it is the 500 watts. The other place where I actually think they saved a little bit of money, possibly, is on the sensor. So this is using a cadence sensor instead of a torque sensor, right? And so when you're moving the cranks, it's not going to be based off of how much input, how much wattage you're putting down on the pedals here, right? It's going to be based on the cadence. But it does use Lectric's what they call PWR system. Now what that does is it basically reduces the amount of watts that the motor is given depending on the assist level that you're in. So try not to get too technical here, but trying to explain what that means. So when you're riding, if you're riding a motor that just is limited by speed at each PAS level, you can go 10 miles per hour in one, 12 in PS2, 15, up to 20, etc. What tends to happen is as you start to pedal, you just kind of immediately get to that speed. It doesn't feel very natural, and you just kind of go. It's fun, but it's not as natural. So by doing things a little different, this does give this bike a little more natural feeling. So what that does is at PS1, it gives less wattage than PS2, then PS3, PS4, PS5, and the less wattage ends up capping your speed. And so it's not a torque sensor, it is a cadence sensor, but it's one of the better, more dialed in cadence sensors that feels a little more natural than other kind of older school cadence sensors. And I think that makes sense. It does keep the cost down, I think, but I also think that aligns more with kind of Lectric's philosophy and kind of Levi and just kind of, you know, they don't love to be cranking on the pedals to get the speed. They want to hop on, pedal, go, and just have fun. They want it to feel natural and good, but they don't want to get to the office sweaty. So that's kind of how this motor, you know, is set up with that cadence sensor. And if you like that, I think you really will appreciate this. And I will say, given that this bike is, you know, $1,000, that's a higher end, better system than I would expect. All right, let's dive into the specs on the Lectric XP 3.0, starting out with the drivetrain. On the 3.0, you get a 1x7 Shimano Tourney gear set, which is nice. It's, you know, entry-level, basic, $1,000 bike. I'm happy that there's Shimano. So here you see the derailleur. There's a little cage to protect the derailleur, which is nice. And up front, it is the over-the-handlebar shifters that you get. Again, it's Shimano, easy to service, easy to get repairs for, entry level, but $1,000, I'm just happy that it's Shimano. The brakes are hydraulic disc brakes on the rear and the front. They're 180 mil rotors by 1.8 mil thick. They are non-branded, and that's, again, to be expected in this price range. And frankly, they performed fairly well all the way around. So I'm really happy that they went with the hydraulic disc brakes, because it did just improve the performance versus the mechanical disc brakes that came before on the bike. Next, let's go over this rear rack. So it's a nice rear rack that supports up to 150 pounds. You get like a kid seat on here. You have these mounting bolts here. So you got 4 mounting bolts, so you can put different accessories on. And it is welded to the frame, so it's nice and sturdy. The fenders, they're metal fenders, both rear and in the front. So if you like metal fenders, you'll like that. They do stay in place really well. If a rock hits them or something, you're going to hear them, but nice fenders. Kickstand, got to have a kickstand, right, on this type of bike. So one thing I like to check is this is not hitting it. So they mounted it back here far enough to where you can move it around and not worried about these getting caught up. There's a little bracket down here for when you're folding it up to kind of protect that front chainring, which I like. Saddle, I find it comfortable. Again, my butt's actually not very picky, so your mileage is going to vary. And note that the kit currently comes with like an upgraded seat and other accessories. You have to take those accessories. It's actually interesting to me that you can't uncheck them if you don't want them. So if you don't want them, just find a bicycle collective or somebody to donate it to. But that does come right now at free of charge. That changes at times. But right now, as of this filming, it is free. Moving to the front of the bike, you have a 50 mil fork. And the stanchions are 28 millimeters thick, so it's not the thickest stanchion, it's not the most travel, but it does smoothen out the bumps and just give it a nicer ride. And overall, with that fork, with 180 mil rotor brakes, with the frame against a folding frame, you'd probably expect it to be a little wobbly, especially with this, you know, adjustable stem here. But to be honest, the bike feels pretty good. They could put a thicker stanchion fork on it. I don't know if they can do that for $1,000. But that's about all I could say. It's not a through axle fork. That's down here. It's just just kind of comes through there and you put it on with those nuts instead of being a full through axle, but I wouldn't expect that either at kind of this price range. Moving up on the bike, you'll see the cables here. how they've kind of done that cable management. They can all go in here. It's opened up through here so you can get to the connections, which is nice, and it still actually looks good. So I like how they've gone up past the connections but left the connections open. And then the cable just kind of runs, so if I can follow this well, all the way down here. Yeah, so it's not run through the frame here, it's underneath. I would like them to actually do a little better job on that with the next round. I can see that coming out with the XP 4.0, just kind of cleaning that up a little bit, make it a little more sleek, a little more smooth on the design there. Mechanics probably like the wires are exposed, makes it easy to change things out, but a lot of consumers like them hidden away. Moving up to the cockpit now, you'll see the handlebars are fairly straight, but there's a little bit of swept backness to them. 635 millimeters wide, and I found them to be pretty comfortable. You'll see it is kind of a telescoping adjustment here. See if I can do this one-handed. So this is how they're able to make it fit a decent amount of riders, is by adjusting that there, then it locks into place. The handlebars are kind of a ergonomic rubber handlebar here. They're not locking, and so you can get a little bit of movement out of them over time, but it's actually not too bad. We've had this bike actually for a little bit on, and it's still doing pretty well. So on both sides, you get the throttle on the right side. And so just note, something that you're gonna need to just be aware of is don't twist the throttle when you go to shift, right? Personally, and this is a very personal opinion, I prefer the thumb throttles that are more over here versus the twist, but I would say it's about 50-50. So that's, again, your mileage might vary. That's just my personal opinion on that. The screen with the XP 3.0 is a fairly basic display. So here is how you control it. You see the on switch, then up and down. So let's turn this on. Okay, you'll see it gives you the energy in bars. And it's fairly accurate. I would say it tends to die a little faster on the back end. Once you hit about halfway, it tends to die a little bit faster. Just note that, and again, it depends on how you ride it, etc. Gives you the miles per hour, what assist level you're in, and then how far you've gone on the trip. And it'll keep track of your total miles. So it's easy to see. It's pretty bright out here today. It's not color. It's nothing incredibly, earth-shattering. But I do like the display. I have a feeling they'll be updating that and kind of going to an electric system as they move forward. But again, pretty basic, but very clean and functional. And I think that's great, especially for a lot of people that haven't ridden e-bikes in a while and just want to get on and kind of ride. So yeah, that's kind of the overview of the bike. Oh, I think I did forget to mention, right now you also do get a free seat post suspension, which I think is really cool, because when you pair that with that front fork, it actually just makes it very comfortable. And just in general with this bike, if you ask me kind of what I think about it, it's a $1,000 bike, right? Like, it's not going to be anything like a Specialized Turbo Vado or, that type of thing, but it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be a $1,000 bike that I can recommend to just about anyone that says, hey, I've got $1,000, what bike should I buy, right? And the nice thing about the Lectric XP is it's from a brand that's very passionate. They care about their riders. They're not endemic cyclists, so you're not going to get any of that, arrogance that sometimes comes with bike shops. Just very approachable company, very nice, very passionate. They'll take care of you, and the bike will just do what you expect to do. Nothing is top of the line spec wise, but it shouldn't be at $1,000. If it was, I would actually be kind of questioning some things. So yeah, in general, really well done by Lectric. And that's probably the reason why it's such a high selling, popular bike, because people just want to get on a bike and go, and this will do that. You can take it a lot of different areas, and just overall well built. All right, we are now to the mechanics corner section. So we're gonna jump in with Ben here and get his take. Again, now Ben did not actually put this one together. We already had it before Ben was here, but I've had him go back through it again as if he hadn't seen it before and give us his takes. Ben, kind of tell us what you liked about the Lectric XP 3.0.
Great question. Thanks as always, Justin. So from front to back, it's easy to identify a couple of things. The brake levers, these are the type that are very easy to bleed. You can use most common bleed sets. It also has mineral oil on there, so there's no guesswork as to whether it's DOT or mineral oil. I like that quite a bit. I do like how easy it is to adjust the mechanical spring on the fork. That's really nice. You don't have to use a wrench, or it doesn't take too much pressure from your hand. The lockout also works real well. I like that quite a bit. I like that the battery is inside. It sure does make it nice and easy to look at, aesthetically super pleasing. The rack, it's welded on, so it can handle a lot of weight. It's really robust. And you know, one other thing that I was thinking about that was really nice is the quality of the welds, especially around the pivot and the clamp, so it makes it really sturdy. So this bike, and you could feel it when you ride it, it rides a lot stiffer and more confidence inspiring than it looks like it might.
Awesome. Yeah. Was there anything else that you noticed?
Oh, I forgot. Yeah, one thing, thanks for asking. Where the motor input wire comes into the back, into the hub motor.
Let me jump back here and show that.
It's concealed. So what this does is it allows you to be able to tighten and check the axle nuts with a deep socket wrench rather than having used an open-end adjustable. The motor input sometimes comes in straight through the axles, which makes it really tough to adjust or remove and install the wheel.
Awesome. What about things do you think they could improve on kind of with the next version?
Great question as well. One thing that mechanically the lockout works awesome, but it's a little clunky sounding, that's all. So that's just me being too picky, probably. I think the stem being this long here, it can sometimes allow a little bit more flex in the front end, so you couple that with the narrower diameter sliders. These are 28 millimeter diameter. It's nice if you can get 32s or 34s. There's a difference in the front end stiffness with that. So with those two in mind, it feels a little flexy in the front end, no big deal. The battery is inside, and I touched on it being nice to look at. It sure is, but to remove the battery, if you live in a hot climate, you've got to open the bike up and unfold it to be able to remove the battery. Just makes it a little tougher if you have to do that. Otherwise, I think that's about it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Ben. Like always, we appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Justin.
All right, now for the fun part. It is time to ride. So I'm going to strap on the GoPro, and we're going to go for a ride on the XP 3.0. I'm going to try to give you a feel for what it's like to actually ride this in person. All right, so we are going for a ride. Now, this is kind of becoming my little off-road course for these kind of lifestyle bikes, just so you can get an idea of what it's like. They do have a front fork. You've got 3-inch fat tires. So yeah, you can take it on this kind of stuff, but this is going to give you an idea of kind of what it feels like. You'll probably notice the camera bouncing around a little bit, because the bike's bouncing around a little bit. That's just kind of normal for something like this. Let's see how it does. So yeah, you'll hear some rattling around in the back with that, Shimano Tourney drivetrain. It's kind of to be expected. If you'll feel it a little bit more. This does not have that seat post suspension, so that would help. So anything that gets really bumpy, just stand up, use your legs, it's fine. Yeah, if you want to kind of go exploring, off the beaten path, that front fork, even though it's, just 50 millimeters to travel, it really does just kind of knock down some of that chatter in your hands and just makes this feel a little more comfortable, even though you are bouncing around a little bit. So I'm going 15, 16 miles per hour. Feel nice and comfortable back here. Don't think I'd feel comfortable at 28, but up to 20, no problem at all. Obviously, if you don't want to pedal, you can just throttle through some of this stuff too. I'm more of a pedaler. Stay away from big potholes like that, no matter what bike you're on. Yeah, so that section gets pretty bumpy. Again, you can hear it rattling around a little bit. But the fork feels good. Like you said, they could put a thicker stanchion fork on, but that 28 mil stanchion still feels pretty nice. So yeah, if you're wanting to ride that type of, off-road, double track, you're gonna have a ton of fun. So now let's transition to the bike path here, and you can see water's running with the snowpack melting. Kind of gorgeous out here. But we're gonna focus back on the bike. So, first thing I want to kind of point out is on the throttle. You have PS1, and when I throttle, it is actually limited by what, PAS you're in. So 1, I'm going 12. I'm kind of going a little bit downhill, but that's kind of where it wants to be. At 2, I'm starting to kick in a little bit here. Got a 13. Low. 14-ish. Go up to 3, it's going to give me a little bit more. 15. And again, with the system that they have, it gives more wattage depending on which assist level you're in. So I'm at 18 now. Slow down with this dog up here. I kick it into PS4. We're going to start getting up more closer to 19, 20. 18, 19, and then in 5, that's where you're going to get more closer to that 19, 20 miles per hour on the throttle. Okay, so now we're going to do kind of a little speed test. So I'm just going to get down to 0 here, kick it to PS5, and we're going to see just try to give you an idea of how long it takes to get up to speed. I have set this in class 3 mode, so here we go. And I'll throttle to start, and I'll pedal. So right there's 28. I mean, that was pretty fast. As you can, as I kind of talked about when I went over with the motor, it is nice and peppy. It doesn't feel like a normal 500 watt motor, and that's because they give it an output of up to 1,000 watts. So right now I'm pedaling pretty nice and easily, right at 26 miles per hour. There's a little bit of wind, but there's also always one when you're going this fast. So I will say, let's slow back down. Let's go into kind of a slower PS level, give you an idea of the motor engagement. So as I pedal, it's probably about a quarter of a turn before it kicks in, maybe a little bit less, which I don't mind because I don't like it if as soon as you move it or touch it, it just goes, because that can lead to some issues when you're getting on and off the bike. Now, as far as when it stops giving you power, when you stop pedaling, there's probably less than a half a second before it kicks out, so it's not as immediate as a mid-drive motor would be, but it is pretty responsive. And like I said, the nice thing with their PWR system is, like in PS3 when I'm 23, 24, to get the higher speeds, I do have to kick it up. And so it kind of is like this, like the feeling, again, it's not like I am having to press harder to go faster. I do have to, switch the assist levels, and it feels a little bit more normal and natural. But again, it's not a torque sensor, and so you don't have to push down harder to go. You just got to get your cadence going and be in the right PAS level. As far as like a fit and comfort of the bike, I did raise up the saddle, so I'm just under 6 feet. I like to say that instead of 5'11". And I do have really nice full leg extension. I have the handlebars down a little bit more. That's just the style that I like, but you can raise them up a couple inches if you want more of an upright seated position. Those handlebars, just the tiniest bit of sweep there, so it's more of like a straight bar, and the width, it is kind of more on the nimble side, so I find it to be nice and comfortable. That's just, again, my personal opinion. I've had a lot of people kind of ride this bike, and that's one of the advantages of the XP 3.0 is if you're taller, it still actually fits you fairly well. Even the step through, going up to 6'3", I would say does a fine job. And that's because of that telescoping stem right there that just raises up a couple extra inches and just helps you keep a good geometry while you're riding, and you're not super hunched over. Again, if you're a taller rider. And then a shorter rider, you really can slam that seat down quite a ways and then drop this like I have and still feel fairly comfortable. And I think that's one of the reasons why we see so many people that haven't ridden in 20 or 30 years you know, A, they want to save money, B, they just want to get on something that they can pedal and go and don't have to crank it with the, you know, with the torque sensor, with the mid-drive. They just want to be out enjoying this beautiful scenery. I mean, it's awesome out here. The more, just get out and ride. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of what this bike does. So just a good, natural, comfortable feel all the way around. No, it doesn't have the comfort of $5,000 bike, not to be expected. But for $1,000, I think this, you know, hits above its pay grade for sure. Okay, now we're gonna take this through a neighborhood here. I'm gonna hop off the curb so you can hear what that sounds like. Again, hear it in the rear, but the front felt really good actually. So once again, this is a class 2, class 3 bike. I like the fact that it goes to class 3 when you are riding, you know, commuting to and from, and you need to get up to speed, you know, because you got cars. So we're, you know, here you don't see great bike infrastructure, right? And so having that extra speed, again, I think does help you with that, which is nice. If you're not comfortable or if it's not allowed to be class 3, just program it down. It's just in the settings, you can go down to, you know, class 2. Other things to note on here, you do have the front light. This bike, I can't remember why we took it off, but it was taken off on there, so sorry about that. But there's a front light to be seen. There's the rear light and the reflectors. There are not turn signals on this bike, so you're gonna have to use, you know, the old-fashioned hand signals, which is fine. But you could easily commute, especially with that rack, you know, 150-pound weight capacity. You will start, if you put like 2 gallons of milk or a child or, you know, something bigger on the back, and if you really start to get into it, you'll feel a little bit of flex, but I've always felt very comfortable on the bike, even with somebody on the back end. So yeah, as far as commuting, hey, hon, I forgot I gotta get a gallon of milk, get a loaf of bread, those types of things. Just makes it functional, and just a nice city commuter. The shifting on the bike, I've been actually in 7 about the entire time. That's one thing I will say. You don't, because of that system, you know, of the cadence sensor with the PWR, like I'm ghost pedaling here in PS5, I'm in PS4, I'm in 5th gear, and I'm starting to ghost pedal, so I actually have to go up to 7 to have kind of good engagement, but it's not ghost pedaling in 7th gear. So I don't know if they need to go to like an 8-speed or 9-speed, because I'm flying at 7 speeds, which again is nice. Just note, unless you're down in the lower assist levels, you're not going to need to shift very much down to 3. So I'm in, let's put in PS1, 15 miles per hour. I'm already kind of ghost pedaling at 3, 5, 6 feels good here. You know, I'm going 19 miles per hour and gear 6. So you're going to spend most of your time in gear 6 and 7. If you're on extra, you know, extra slow, then yeah, you're probably going to get down to 5th and 4th. You don't really need 1st, 2nd, or 3rd much, to be honest. But again, overall, from a commuting standpoint, let's kick this back up. Tons of fun, feels really good, and lets you get out and ride around, which is fantastic. One final thought, again, that throttle. There's a lot of people that have challenges with throttles on e-bikes, and I just, like in a scenario like that, you know, I didn't downshift, I was in 7th gear, and so to be able to start with the throttle and just get me up to speed, I think is a really nice thing to be able to do. Just makes so you don't have to concentrate so much on the shifting if you don't want to. Yeah, so final thing that I kind of want to talk about is the brakes. You know, those hydraulic disc brakes, how do they do? Pull off to the side here, get up to speed, you know, 24 miles per hour. Stop really nice and comfortable. That wasn't a panic stop by any means, but they do have decent stopping power. Not the best stopping power in the world. But I don't know if you even necessarily need it. I think there's some people that argue they should go to like a 4-piston brake given the weight of the bike. But again, when I stop, it stops pretty good. So I think they're good. I think you might end up having a little more maintenance, maybe, but they are a mineral oil brake. So any bike shop should be able to service this for you. And that again, is a nice thing with these hydraulic disc brakes. Maintenance is a little more technical, but you can get it done kind of about anywhere. So there you have it. That is the Lectric XP 3.0. Again, I know some of the more traditional cyclists in the group are going to be like, that's really one of the best selling bikes in the US, if not the best selling bike? And the answer is yeah. You know, I think as you kind of walk and listen to the review, I hope it kind of came through that, yeah, there's a lot of things that they could upgrade on this bike, but it's $1,000. And so many times, you know, if you're used to riding $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 bikes, you know, $1,000 is cheap. But the reality is, to a lot of consumers, I mean, that's a lot of money. $1,000 is a lot. I remember the first bike I bought a used Specialized, you know, it was $800 and I thought I had just spent a fortune. So I think that this just really hits home to a lot of people here that want a functional bike that's reliable, that is going to get up, you know, class 2, class 3 speeds, going to be fun, going to be comfortable with that front suspension fork, and just get you out riding and have a ton of fun and not break the bank. So I hope this review is helpful. If you have any questions, please leave them down below. You know, we've been, you know, wanting to go kind of as deep as possible here, share as much as we can with these bikes, but we're never going to cover everything. So please leave the questions in the comments and we'll do our best to get back to you. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. We're going to be doing a lot of cool things coming up, a lot of bikes to review, a lot of like motor tests and some other things that we think are going to be super fun. So subscribe, pay attention, and if you stuck along with me this long, thank you. I really appreciate it. Have a great day, and I hope to see you all out on the trails.